Welcome back, guys. Captain Foley here.
And me, Commander Cookins. Nice to see you all again there, as well as you, Captain. What is our offering today for these fine viewers of Trekyards?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Commander. This week we will be looking at the only canon 3-nacelled starship in Star Trek history. A true fan favorite, the Galaxy X. Look, you got one, and I got one. We got a lot of Galaxy X's. Boo, 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 boo.
Yes, the one we see in all good things. But, Stuart, is it actually canon? As it is an alternate future canon? These questions we'll answer in this episode, I'm sure. But is it, Stuart?
Well, that's a very good question. But considering it was loved enough to be included in CBS's approved game Star Trek Online, I think we should consider it canon. And I, for one, am kind of happy for that, even though it's not my favorite looking ship. As you guys know, I love the Federation class TOS Dreadnought as seen in the Franz Joseph Technical Manual. Even designed my own 3-nacelled starship, the Foley class. So I love 3-nacelled design, the whole idea and look of them. But because of the pairs rule implemented by Gene Roddenberry, we will likely never see the TOS design in a game like Star Trek Online. So it was surprising to see this version of the tri-nacelle design turn up in TNG.
And the ironic thing is it was done to Andrew Probert's Galaxy class design. And as we all know, Andrew is a huge supporter of the pairs rule and not a fan of this version of his beautiful design. He considered the pair rules and the line of sight rules to be the rule of God, Gene's fundamentals, and not to be changed under any reason. Even every ship he designed incorporates these rules, so the irony is quite palpable there.
Yeah. I just want to start this off by saying, too, that a lot of the information that I got from this ship was from Star Trek Online information, as well as some side canon stuff, some novels and things. So, because there's not a lot of information for it on screen, because it's only one episode for like 3 shots, you know what I mean? So
cool shots, but yeah.
So we managed to work out quite a bit of information just from other sources. So
yeah, I learned some stuff already, and I'll pre-read.
So, well, let's learn all about it. As mentioned, this was Admiral Riker's ship and was introduced in an alternate future timeline in the series finale of TNG. It is speculated that Riker was specifically responsible for using the Enterprise and perhaps extremely instrumental in its conversion to this Dreadnought of sorts. This new version of the design was referred to as a Dreadnought exploration cruiser and was commonly referred to as a pure unadulterated warship. Kind of unfederation-y.
Yeah, very opposite terms there. True exploration warship. But hey, you need one of those in the fleet.
I think the Federation just put the exploration part in so that the other races would be like, oh, it is still an exploration ship, we're fine.
Don't look at it from this angle, because you won't like it.
Just ignore all the weapons upgrade. The
Galaxy X, as it is referred to, suggests that it may have been experimental, so it's really not known if the Enterprise is the only Galaxy class to be converted into this design, in this alternate future, of course. It was introduced at the end of the 24th century. It was expected to continue into service well into the 25th century as well. This was considered a Dreadnought subclass of the Galaxy class design and does feature prominently in Star Trek Online, making it likely that the Enterprise, as with the previous TOS Enterprise, was refitted and served as the testbed for new systems. Then when it proved successful, it's likely that newer ones were constructed afterwards, scratch build refits, scratch build Galaxy X's.
Mm-hmm. Having almost the same dimensions of the Galaxy class, of 642 meters long by 463 meters wide and about 250 meters high, with the additional top-mounted warp nacelle, the ship, of course, weighed just a little bit more, tipping the scales at 4,500,000 metric tons. Yes. It has 42 decks and a standard operational crew of 1,000 personnel. The ship is speculated to employ standard warp drive as well as the addition of transwarp systems and eventually quantum slipstream drive by the time of Star Trek Online.
And I have things to say about the warp, but I'm sure we'll get into that in the discussion portion of this show.
Yes.
In addition to the Galaxy class's 17 phase arrays and 3 torpedo launchers, this new incarnation of the ship also sported a new dual cannon phaser spiral lance design running along the lower side of the saucer module, dual mega phaser cannons on the upper saucer module, nacelle mounted phaser strips, additional photon launchers, and a more advanced secondary impulse drive unit, and additional power generation with the addition of a third center line nacelle. These additions were in direct response to the collapse of the Khitomer Accords in 2399. Increased hostilities from the Klingon Empire meant that Starfleet was ill-equipped to protect its interests from the Klingons and needed to increase their fleet's firepower and overall performance.
In addition, the Federation and Starfleet had recently been allowed to develop and implement new cloaking technologies on selected starships by the Romulans as part of the revised Treaty of Algernon. Now, whether this is due to the use of cloaking systems having been installed in the Defiant and being of great usefulness during the Dominion War is unclear, as this was an alternate timeline, so did the Dominion War even happen? I don't know. And the revisions to the Treaty of Algernon had been made under unknown circumstances at this point. Although it is likely that this was the direct result of the severe weakening of the Romulan Empire due to the Hobus supernova and the destruction of Romulus itself. Which makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Interesting. Well, I mean, we don't know if the Romulans and the Federation are more allies in that alternate universe, and therefore it's like, take our cloaks if you help us protect our, we haven't got a home. Shelter us and we'll give you cloaks. I mean, yeah, that's interesting. Parallel timelines, guys.
Well,
interesting.
It says they were allowed to develop and implement cloaking technologies, which means the Federation would be making their own at that point. So,
well, we've stolen cloaks before. We've had them for hundreds of years, almost. It's not as if they're new technology. The additional engine nacelle assembly greatly increased the ship's speed, allowing for its quantum slipstream ability. And by the year 2409, the Galaxy X starships, like the USS Victory, were all equipped with cloaking devices and were serving as flagships of the Federation fleet. The design of the Galaxy X class cruiser allowed its commanding officer to choose from different designs of livery, altering the physical arrangements or components such as struts and nacelles and markings to make each ship slightly different from the other Galaxy X's in the fleet. These changes could be implemented with a relative ease at Starbase facilities due to the very plug-and-play nature of the newly modified components. The most unique and slightly upgraded versions of this configuration were known by a new class name, that being the Ventra class.
However, despite the best efforts of the Starfleet Corps of Engineers, the ability to saucer separate was sacrificed due to the installation of the massive phaser lance running along the spine of the ship, as well as the implementation of additional power feeds and engineering subsystems, which were installed to accommodate the additional warp power supplied by the third nacelle and the new nacelle configuration. The spinal lance itself is truly a devastating weapon and increased the vessel's firepower by 150% at point-blank range. It fires a single massive phaser beam channeled through the third nacelle's specifically designed warp reactor and coils that is so devastating it can quite easily slice right through an opponent's shields and hull completely in one volley. It can even pierce multiple targets at one time if they happen to be lined up correctly.
With two-dimensional thinking.
Yeah, exactly. This ability does take time to power up and is extremely hard on all components involved, however, and has a very limited range. It is therefore used very sparingly to prevent catastrophic systems failures ship-wide.
The ship's torpedo tubes also upgraded to include quantum torpedo firing abilities, and the ship carried an impressive complement of quantum torpedoes as well as photon torpedoes as a result. The ship also features the very latest in regenerative shielding, but did not incorporate a blade of hull armor due to some technical difficulties in that regard because of the structural deficiencies inherent in that ship's design. The ship's internal layout remained roughly the same, however, although gone are some of the rather spacious quarters for civilian personnel and family. In their place are now rather cramped barracks, which allowed the Galaxy X to easily accommodate up to 5,000 Federation soldiers, should the need arise.
Again, the use of the word soldiers with the Federation just doesn't sound right. Now, considering that the Enterprise D was in fact destroyed in the movie Star Trek Generations...
Oh yeah, it was, wasn't it, Stuart?
It was, I think it was, yeah.
I remember that scene.
This whole history of development is not an established canonical history of the ship's actual design development. But its appearance in the CBS-approved Star Trek Online does strongly imply that the plans to upgrade the Galaxy class at some point were likely on the drawing boards at the time of the movie's events being unfolded. We can easily assume that these ships were eventually constructed at some point, even though the events that Q had set in motion during All Good Things never actually occurred. So whether or not the ship was a direct response to the Klingon hostilities or not is extremely suspect. But needless to say, we like to think that they were eventually constructed and used by Starfleet at some time and in some capacity.
It is strongly believed that due in large part to Captain Picard's encounter with Q as a result of the events of All Good Things, as well as the multiverse events encountered in the TNG episode Parallels, that the Enterprise D was able to take several sensor scans of the alternate Galaxy X's refit design. Using these scans in conjunction with the already established drawing board concepts, the Starfleet Corps of Engineers were able to reverse engineer and develop several technologies, primarily the phaser lance design, and it was these instances that gave birth to the Galaxy X we see in the corrected, if not canon, timeline that takes place in Star Trek Online.
So there you have it, guys. That's all we know about the ship, and this is a ship that a lot of people have come to know and love, and it's our attempt to explain why and how the ship may actually come into service despite the altered timeline events. We really hope you enjoyed this look at the Galaxy X. But now it's time for some discussion, I think, because there's a few things that I'd like to talk about.
Well, dive right into them, Stuart. I'm all ears.
First and foremost, I think it should still be able to saucer separate. And have a little short phaser lance there. And this one would be inactive when it separated, obviously, because at that point, But I still think it would make sense to saucer separate.
Well, if, like, the...
I do...
If the primary weapon component is on the underbelly, and this is just like a focusing chamber to allow for range, and this just becomes an ultra short range weapon, and that's just like it's like the barrel of a gun. I mean, if you take part of the barrel off, you can still shoot it. Just it gives you that accuracy at long range.
Yeah. The only thing that kind of makes sense about saucer separation is the fact that they had to add additional power feeds and stuff for these impulse engines and all this jazz up here. So I guess there's not really too much added on there because the third nacelle is mounted at the back.
Yeah.
But still.
Well, I mean, again, function. The source separation was designed to help save parts of the crew. If you remove it's now a battleship. You're not having families on board, and you're going to source separate. I mean, I think takes out the necessity of that design. Whereas now, if you say, right, we have to take out source separation, but we can include the phaser lance, I think they're going to use a phaser lance. So, I mean, I'm fine with it. Doesn't need that functionality, but it would have been good if they had, like, I mean, these are such add-on pieces. It'd be nice if they just literally, you could explosive bolt them off and then still separate. So the function's still there. You just like the TOS Connie, you can't re-establish the proper connection with that starbase, so you can't put it all back together properly, but you can at least escape, maybe. So, I mean, what did you think of the ship when it first appeared on the screen? Because it was quite a interesting appearance.
I was like, wow, that's cool. Glad there's like a Dreadnought. I've always wanted to see a Dreadnought, and even at that age, I was like, I want to see Dreadnought on screen. So to see it, I was like, that's pretty cool. And the funny thing is, I've talked before about how much I dislike this design. To be honest, it's really starting to grow on me. And the more I look at it, the more I like it. But anyway, no, I was impressed to see it on screen, and the fact that it is a 3 nacelle design going against Gene Roddenberry's rules, and it's actually on-screen canon. And again, the irony of it being Andrew Probert's design, and we know he's not a fan of this. He's just
we know he isn't.
They tacked things onto his beautiful design, and so yeah, it was interesting. I was excited to see it, but then I kind of thought, oh my god, that thing's ugly after a while. But like I said, now it's starting to grow on me again. So
see, I kind of like. I mean, it's a kit bash, but in I think quite restrained ways. The fact that this third nacelle actually fills in a space that you didn't realize there was very naturally. I mean, like having fins is a bit of an odd thing, and these top pieces. I mean, some of it's odd, but I think conceptually, the way the 3 nacelles interact looks great, and the phaser lance. I mean, from this one view, I mean, it looks pretty interesting. I mean, it's Galaxy, but more. As a warship, I mean, that extra warp nacelle to stabilize the warp bubble, push that speed, the extra weaponry to push the weapons. I mean, you're really, giving this thing a refit into that next generation of power. See what I did there? Use all the words.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got the no longer shuttle bays work because they've put the impulse engines where the shuttle bays were. Although I think in one of the concepts is now a shuttle bay right there. That's a new shuttle bay in the impulse in the strut, which is quite an odd way of doing it. But
well, it makes sense to almost put new impulse modules there because you've already got the big hollowed out shuttle bay, so to install new components in there would be fairly straightforward and simple. So it's almost a design that makes sense. It's more of a plug and play. We'll build the components. When the Galaxy comes back in, we'll just have them ready to go, and we'll just clear out the shuttle bay and plug them in, and then do some minor work inside to correct it. So, and I think that's where a lot of the saucer separation capabilities might disappear, because really, when I was researching this, and they said that extra power feeds and stuff for the nacelle, I'm thinking, well, it's mounted at the back, and even for the lance, it goes straight through from the back engineering all the way straight through.
Oh, yeah.
So it doesn't really affect the saucer separation so much.
Yeah, it shouldn't do, shouldn't it?
But looking at it now with the impulse there, depending how far they go into the neck, it could affect some of the coupling systems.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm fine with it not saucer separating. It kind of makes sense with the lance, but at the same time,
well, I think though, if the Enterprise is the prototype, although again it's such a parallel, we don't know what the situation is. They would rather have redundancies in this phaser lance and take out saucer set, but I think you could definitely design this. I mean, the fact that your physical model can separate means they obviously worked it out. But
that could be the case. Yeah, the first iteration with the phaser lance took away the saucer separation abilities on the Enterprise, but then all the ones made afterward they might be able to reincorporate it. Yeah.
But that's the big thing I want to talk to you about. This whole idea of it's. I mean, it's canon because it's a canon concept.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was undone. Multiple parallel timelines have happened in multiple. So you do think that then it would still be created? I mean, Stowe is obviously one thing, but obviously they've got the 20th century time ship you can fly. It's just a hollowed out version. It's you can fly everything. So the fact that you can fly this doesn't say that much in terms of it being canon. But do you think this design would still happen, given that obviously the Sovereign happened, and it never appeared again?
Yeah, well, like we said in the script, I think plans for something like this might have been on some developers, somebody's drawing board at somewhere, as a just in case. If we ever need to really upgrade these ships, we can easily or relatively easily do it, and provide extra firepower and whatnot without creating a whole new line of ships. So I think that was probably somewhere in an experimental archive, blueprints, just in case. But whether or not after the Sovereign was developed and stuff, they would still go ahead with this. I mean, is it cost effective to just use the galaxies you still have and add components to them? Or is it more cost effective to just build a brand new ship and keep the galaxies doing what they're doing? And are you going to upgrade, or are you going to build these from new, as we said? I mean, for Star Trek Online, we were assuming they're being built new, because they do have the plug-and-play capability of changing your nacelles and all that kind of thing. So,
and also it's like 30 years in the future, so they're not... it's everything's sort of scratch build. Yeah. So
it all comes down to whether it's cost-effective to just upgrade what's existing or just create a new ship. But no, I really feel that somebody somewhere designed this as a just-in-case measure.
Yeah.
And something that could be refitted quite easily and quickly.
Well, if the concept of the Dreadnoughts, the TOS Dreadnought and other ones, if that had been an established, actually 100% canon, then I would assume that, just like Doug, Drexler designed the NX-01 with the idea of a secondary module, secondary hull in the design, I would assume that every ship, which has separate nacelle configuration, not like the Norway or anything, they would actively think, well, what if we put that third nacelle on? What if we add the extra bit of power? Because if the Dreadnought concept was so normal. So I think, yes, again, like I said, the space is very natural. I think if we look at the Prime timeline, I think they might have considered adding their third nacelle. I think the only piece that they wouldn't consider is the Force Lance, because that is quite a radical piece of tech. The fact that it taps into the warp core stuff is very TMP, and that's fine, but I think this is a thing they wouldn't have done in Prime. But I do think this stuff, because mega phasers, like the Reliant, that's fine. Torpedo launchers, I mean, it's really ridiculous to have them behind the bridge. That is strange.
Yeah.
But if you had them either higher, I mean, having just more torpedo modules makes a lot of sense. That instantly works. And more phasers, phaser arcs, and all the nacelles. Again, risky, but risk is our business. This ship is now 7 years of production plus all the development stage plus the buildings. I mean, this is like a 10, 15, even maybe 20-year-old in different phases of ship. They've tested the kinks out. So if you say, right, we know that if you put this much armor, the radiation won't cause it to self-destruct. I mean, there are things you could improve that many years on.
Yeah.
But I think the phaser lance, that one piece, I don't think Prime would do. I think they'd rather add a quantum bay, redevelop this, make it a big quantum launcher, something that way around. Because if you look at Star Trek, they did go towards or pulse phasers. You know, adding several pulse phaser turrets there. They never really went to a one single beam of weapon. They tended just to improve into quantums or pulse phasers. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, and the thing too is that we mentioned in our Galaxy class episode, the fact that the saucer module has so much space in it, and a lot of it is undesignated. It can be configured for science labs, whatever. So a lot of it's not even used the majority of the time. Yeah. There's so much additional room to add the feeds for these mega phasers. The lance right through the middle and take out a lot of those spacious rooms, as we said. Also, there'd be no captain's yacht now, which really, is that a thing? Is that a thing you really need?
It was very, very useful in the show, so...
That's true. And look what they did to the registry number. That's just atrocious. Come on now, guys.
Yeah, well, yes.
What's yours look like? I want to see what yours... Because yours is Eagle Moss. Mine's just a little Johnny Lightning.
Mine, it is in between it.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. In the real life of the show, obviously, it was the 4-foot miniature. They just put components on, boom, new ship, so it's just reutilizing. And then the joke about that is that model's then reused in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
But they didn't take the phaser strips off the nacelles. That's why we have this Ventra class subclass that has these phaser strips, because it literally is just the All Good Things miniature used again. Oops, we forgot to take the other things off. And a whole subclass that people love because it's got phaser strips. Like, it's just because they accidentally forgot to take off the nacelle mounted phasers.
Yeah.
I love that little cannon made by not doing something.
I think it was a mistake that they just didn't take those off. Somebody didn't realize it, or do you think they thought, well, let's just leave those on because that's an improvement they might make?
No, I think it would damage the model. I mean, they've obviously stuck it on. I think it's just a thing they couldn't take off, and obviously stand def. Who's going to notice? It's just little things on top of the engines. I mean, it's they're pretty. I mean, the Adventure's in one shot, I think, literally, and then it goes to CG. So
yeah,
we have that one still of the ship. But I think though, if you obviously you've got the Sovereigns, you've got the Defiance, you've got the Akiras, all of which have sort of a more weapon profile. If you want to refit these sorts of ships, for Dominion War and such, I think more naturally you just refit the torpedo launchers to be quantums. Instantly got a boost. Pull out all the phaser emitters, put in new phaser emitters. I mean, there's things you could do to enhance it. I think that the reason it was done so much, as you said, is because of the Klingon war. I mean, there's so much war brewing. We have to absolutely revolutionary jump. We have to give it that 0.5 refit that gives it that extra. Speaking of, Stuart, the warp factor. Remember, they're like, go to warp 13.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, okay.
That could be the new transwarp scale, because by that point they'll have transwarp installed and working, maybe. Yeah. And it does mention transwarp engines, and then eventually we know in Star Trek Online it's quantum slipstream, so...
That just amazed me, though, that they... I mean, I don't want it to sound futuristic, but that's one of the rules, like, it was a set-down thing. Instantly I break it, but I agree. I think we talked about before, the warp scale is still an exponential curve. 9.9 is better, is a lot faster than 9.9. Every 9 is actually quite a big chunk more. So if they redid the warp scale and said, okay, each 9.9 is actually warp 10, warp 11, warp 12, warp 13, then it's an easier scale to memorize, because you're not saying warp 9.9, helm, warp 9.9999963, yes sir, or just say warp 16. I mean, if you can't breach warp 10, then redefine warp 10, as we've done for lots of things, So I think that's just what it meant. They just pushed that tech further. I mean, we've seen it redone 3 times the warp scale, or twice. That was amazed me. Yeah.
And I think I think the fact that it's probably a transwarp scale at that point instead of just a warp scale might be the reason. So,
I mean, it's a long way in the future. I mean, if you think about everyone's grey, they're all admirals. I mean, if you look at I can't remember, it's like 20 years, 15 years. I mean, it's a pretty hefty amount of time. It's past any Trek we saw after the fact. I mean, it's after Nemesis, it's after anything else. So it's a decent chunk of time. Yeah. And you mentioned the Dominion War. The Dominion War would still happen because Picard had no... they don't change anything in the present. Picard just has his disease thing and then goes wonky, and then the future changes.
So it could be that if the Enterprise didn't get destroyed in Generations, it might have been upgraded for the Dominion War specifically.
Yeah, because I mean, the Dominion War was started, irrespective of the Enterprise D, that crashed. Dominion War hadn't started, but it was still brewing.
Yeah.
So its crash or non-crash wouldn't have affected that. So yeah, I mean, it could be Instead, they said, okay, our flagship's destroyed. We've got to give Picard a better ship. He wants a better ship, guys. So we've got to finish the Z. We've got to finish it. And they're like,
and he said he doesn't think it'd be the last ship to have the name Enterprise. There's lots of letters in the alphabet still, so we got to build him a new one.
We can't just restamp our USS, Challenger that we've got in this crate. See picture, ILM. It's like we can't just give him another Galaxy class, guys. We've got to build him a new ship. It's like, he'll save the galaxy one day.
Again. Anyway, guys, I think that's probably it for our discussion on the Galaxy X. Hope you enjoyed it. There is a lot of speculation and things on this one because it's really not that established canon-wise. Like you said, one episode.
Well, it's a canon concept, just in an alternate timeline.
Yeah, and they do flesh it out quite a bit in Star Trek Online, which is nice. So that's where I got a lot of the information from. So those guys are awesome. They do a great job with that kind of thing. So
I know that when the ship came out, it was really everyone wanted that ship because that phase lance was meaty. You won battles just using it. So yeah,
absolutely. All right, guys, so I hope you liked the video. If you did, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help us out to create more content like this, you can do so by heading over to Trekyards.com and clicking the donate button, or by clicking the link in the description below and heading over to our Patreon, where you can help us out on a monthly basis. And it's kind of like a magazine subscription, but you're not getting a magazine in the mail. You're getting daily content from us that's free on YouTube, but it helps us out immensely if you could just throw a few dollars our way every month and try to hit our $1,000 goal where we can start doing fleet yards on a regular basis as well, which is other sci-fi ships. So
yes, but if you can't give any money, then just share this content, any of our Trekkers content that you enjoy, with anyone, anywhere that you think will enjoy it, because we only expand by you guys helping. So if you can, please do, and thanks so much.
All right, so until next time, guys, I'm Captain Foley.
And I am Commander Kungs.
See you soon.
Warp 13, engage. Bye.